Welcome to How I Raised It, the podcast that goes behind the scenes with entrepreneurs who've raised capital. We uncover the tips, tricks, and techniques they use to get investors to write a check. Strap in and turn it up.
Hi, welcome to another episode of How I Raised It, produced by Foundersuite.com. Today I have Christina Drake of Willa's Kitchen coming to us from currently in Hudson Valley, but most of the time from Brooklyn, right?
That's right. Brooklyn, New York.
What do you do in Hudson Valley? Is it like what are the outdoor recreational activities there?
There's a ton of hiking, and the Culinary Institute is up here. So I think that, combined with the fact that there's like amazing produce everywhere, means that you can get really, really good food. Right now, obviously, it's being delivered or it's takeout or maybe eating outside in like a safe, socially distanced way. But there's tons of good food, hiking, outdoor stuff, being out by the river is beautiful. It's just a gorgeous and like super peaceful kind of chill place to be if you're trying to escape the city.
Cool. And Brooklyn, what's the scene in Brooklyn these days? Things are kind of stabilizing in New York, right?
Yeah. Thankfully. I think the infection rate's like less than 1% based on the COVID test. So, it's pretty miraculous. Last spring, I remember we were hearing ambulances all day, every day. And, presumably mostly just from COVID. And now, being in the city, you hear more of just people hanging out in parks and all the, summer activities and stuff like that. So it does feel more close to normal.
Close to normal. That's good.
Yeah.
Good. Cool. Well, let's talk about what you guys do. What is Willa's Kitchen?
Willas is, creating a new paradigm in non-dairy plant-based food. So when people think about, plant-based milks, for example, they usually assume that they're made of plants. And what we were kind of shocked to find looking at the category is that they're mostly made of a lot of sugar, a lot of artificial ingredients, not really whole plants. And so we started with our grandmother Willa's recipe, and we created a completely unique trade secret approach to using the entire whole oat in our oat milk. So a lot of oat milks, for example, they take the whole grain and they kind of strip them of the protein and the fiber, sort of like you get with like a processed white bread. And with Willas, we found a way to use the entire whole oat. So you get all of the yummy oatiness, as well as protein, fiber, minerals. You can feel good, knowing the whole soul of the oat is intact. And, we just believe in using organic, real ingredients from nature and having super sustainable practices. So we're starting with a few oat milks, and then we're expanding from there.
Interesting. So I've never had oat milk. And frankly, I haven't had too many milk alternatives. Almond milk probably, and maybe some soy milk. Is it similar to either of those, or is it its own total separate flavor?
It's similar in that it's a non-dairy plant-based milk. It's different in terms of like the taste and the texture and sustainability practices. So, with some of these plant-based milks, people find that they're really watery, or they have like a chalky aftertaste, or they don't blend in coffee. They like separate, or they don't create like a nice latte. Oat milk is great because it behaves more like dairy milk, and our product is really, really similar in terms of texture and kind of like mouthfeel to a dairy milk. When you pour it into an iced coffee, you get those like beautiful swirls and things like that. Nice. And then the other thing from a sustainability perspective, oats are a cover crop. They don't require tons of water, like almonds are kind of depleting the water supply in California, as are a lot of other nuts. With oats, you don't really have those same issues, and they're abundant. So it's really easy for us to get organic, non-GMO oats that we can feel really good about using.
Cool. What's the leading, if you did a pie chart of non-dairy milks, how's the industry shake out? Like which one's the largest and where's oat milk?
Yeah, if you look at like kind of, broad strokes of purchase behavior, over half of America buys plant-based milks, and that's still primarily almond milk. But, we have tons of relationships with coffee shops and baristas and chefs Baristas are basically, tossing out soy milk, not using that at all anymore. A lot of them are getting rid of coconut milk, and oat milk has since in the last year overtaken almond milk in terms of preferences with their customers, especially kind of in like the bigger cities and urban areas. So yeah, it's growing by over 650% a year, and it was one of the top selling products during COVID, even higher than hand sanitizer. So
Really?
our product is shelf stable. Yeah, our packaging is shelf stable. So, people were stocking up, making their at-home lattes, making, dairy-free everything, cooking more, looking for healthier ingredients. And so, yeah, that was one silver lining with COVID for us.
That's interesting. That makes sense, though. I guess I feel like we might have even bought some powdered milk at some point when the whole lockdown or, shelter in place started, which I'm sure we'll donate to a food bank and never, ever use it. But yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Interesting. And well, we're going to talk about fundraising and your business kind of combined, but maybe let's talk about fundraising. Let's get right to it. How much have you guys raised for this?
We've raised 400,000. I'd say about 175,000 of that was during kind of like the worst parts of the lockdown. So we're really proud of being able to continue to fundraise through that. And we are raising an additional 350 on this round, in our seed round.
So this amount you've raised so far, is it all angels, or where do you tap?
Yeah, it's all angels. So, some of them were people that were introduced to us to, do a lot of angel investing. For some, this was their first foray into it, and then everybody else was kind of somewhere in between. So, yeah, total mixture of people we didn't know and family and friends, but all of them really strategic, people who give us amazing advice, have experience we don't have, and perspective that we don't have.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, if I was raising money for something like this, do you find people that have built and grown like a Snapple or something? Or, do you find beverage people to possibly invest, or what was your sort of target profile?
We have thought about doing it that way. And in all honesty, that's not something we've done a lot of. We've come up with those lists. We've approached it a bit, but the majority of what we've found to be really successful is just we've been kind of approaching this whole business with just trying to build as many relationships as we can. So with fellow founders, with people who work in food and bev kind of in, more supportive roles, with people who advise. The entrepreneurial community is just so wonderful and supportive and generous with their time that, that's been really great. So some of the people who've invested were like a friend who connected us with an entrepreneur who connected us with someone else, and then that person invested. Or our lawyers connected us with somebody who invested. Or, we met with someone who was connected to our business on the supply side or the distribution side, and they were so excited about what we were doing. They invested and even, invested on behalf of their sales team to basically incentivize them and give them a stake in our business. So for us, what we've found to be the most successful is just, people who have gotten to know us, whether it's in a couple of meetings or have known us for a long time, I guess just through referrals, all that stuff. That's kind of how we've found our fundraising to be the most successful.
Interesting. So it sounds like a lot of kind of playing the node game of, who knows this person, who can then refer on to another person, and that node leads to
almost like you get introduced to a founder who's been really successful through somebody else, and then you talk to them and they get excited, and then they say, oh, you should also meet with this person, and then that person says you should also meet with this person. And so I guess we've just been really fortunate to have people get really excited about what we're doing and how it's unique, and then actively want to help us and connect us with more people. I think when you find people who are passionate about the same things you are, who share your values, whether it's about health or sustainability or something else, or, they just believe in you, that goodwill can really, really go a long way.
Yeah, I think that's you touch on something there. If you get people excited about your business, they're eager to refer it on. And if people aren't offering to make those referrals on, then you're not getting people excited about your business. what,
or maybe it's just not the right thing for that person. But there's always people who are passionate and want to help fellow entrepreneurs or care about some of the same things. Just have to find them.
But I find, like, we're all motivated by our own self-interest, even though I think founders are pretty good about being unselfish and unselfishly helping. I think still I'm asked all the time for introductions, and I know if there's two companies, A and B, and one is going to make me look good because it's a really exciting business, I'm much more eager to refer that on or make referrals for that versus one that's not interesting, right? I mean, it's probably a combination of like good founder goodwill plus also, you did a good job getting people excited, right? I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you. I hope that's the case. I've heard, people say things like you make your own luck.
Sure.
I think, we've had lots of things that were just super lucky that I don't know if they had anything to do with us. But I think also if you're putting just a lot of goodwill out into the world and you're helping other people, that will come back to you. If you're open to taking a meeting with someone, even though they're probably not going to invest in your business, maybe they invest in tech and you're in food and it's just not going to happen, doesn't matter, because what do you have to lose? You get another chance to pitch someone, and for sure they know somebody who's probably connected to food in some way. So that's kind of how we've approached it. We don't really turn down meetings with anybody.
How many meetings do you think you had to raise that 400K? Any sense of your funnel's shape and size?
Oh my God. I would have to go through, we have like a database that's sort of like all the founders we know, investors we know. I know there's over 50 some founders in there that we've been connected with. And I wouldn't say that most of those connected us with investors, but some of them did. And then some of them connected us with somebody who connected us with an investor. I actually don't know how many meetings we have had. Maybe I've just avoided looking at that number, Totally. But I would say I feel really good about our hit rate, and maybe part of that is because it's been through people just willing to refer us, and the fact that, I don't know, when you go through referrals and you just kind of start out just meeting with everybody you can who might be helpful, the people who are going to continue to refer you are the people who think that they are actually going to be able to help you. So, that can work. But I mean, we've also had a lot of meetings that, it just wasn't the right fit. And I'm not going to go out and say that every single one landed us something super, beneficial to everybody.
What would you say was the most salient or exciting part of your pitch? And before you answer, I mean, I can see a new category. It seems like in the food business, you've got this new category come out. People jump in, and there's one or two winners that sort of emerge that get acquired by, large food businesses within a couple of years. And like we had a Rowdy Mermaid kombucha guy on the show, and a few others, and it seems to follow that pattern. Was that like a big part of your pitch? Like, we're going to be this new category winner, or what?
Yeah, I think it was a mix. So when we first started pitching, I mean, the way we pitched just changed dramatically. I think we thought we really needed to get into the details and the numbers. And what I think we found people, I mean, all investors are looking for different things, but the things that are kind of the commonalities are showing the bigness of the opportunity. In our category, there really isn't a purpose-driven leader that's leading with values like we are. It doesn't exist. And in the things that we're doing are only being done by us. So that helps, being super differentiated in a category that's growing really rapidly. But I think beyond that, I think a lot of it was our team, I think, a lot of times it's kind of like a job interview. They're not just buying a product or buying a company. They're buying into a belief system and the founders and their own experiences. And, when we first started pitching, it was like we introduced ourselves and did these really long introductions and got really into the details and got really into the numbers. And since then, we've kind of started with a broader, like, this is what we're trying to do. This is why it's unique. by the way, my sister, my co-founder, is a chemical engineer with a Six Sigma background who goes around the world fixing manufacturing plants, so that comes in handy. And here's how big the category is, and here's what we're going to do. And I think, you know, I think maybe this is just me, but when you go into your first meetings with investors, or if you're feeling intimidated, you can kind of like not treat them as people and just like really oversell things that maybe you feel are just going to be the most important. But there's always an emotional aspect. There's always a part of, you know, of it about relatability. And so I think that can be something that's really easy to miss. And that became more and more and more important to the way we pitched.
Yeah, that's an important topic that we haven't really talked about. Like, I think it is easy to just go into robot mode and kind of, you have your memorized pitch and you bang through it, and you got to make sure you get through it. And then, yeah. So any tips on that, achieving that relatability and the human touch?
Yeah.
Come natural
totally.
to you. Yeah.
I mean, this is maybe something that doesn't work for everyone. But for us, we started to feel like, you know, when you go around the room in a meeting and everybody does these like really long introductions, and then you start to feel like, oh my gosh, I need to do a really long introduction too, because everybody else just named their whole resume. We were doing a bit of that in the beginning, and it's like, it kind of takes the wind out of it all, right? Like all of a sudden you're kind of in this, like, everybody's talking about their resumes, and that's not the only reason you're there. I think it really helps to kind of start with like the bigger vision of why you set out to do this in the first place, why it's important to you. And then you're kind of starting from a point of passion. And, you know, even if we're pitching somebody who's never had a plant-based milk, is not lactose intolerant, has never even thought about it, at least we're kind of like bringing them into our world a little bit, before just kind of like hitting them over the head with our background, if that makes sense. The other thing, I think that was like some of the best advice I've ever gotten, was, you know, when you're going into a meeting and you're maybe worried you're not going to say the right thing, or you're not going to remember every single key point, and you're like thinking about all those things. Oh, I got to remember to get this across and that, and I have to make sure they walk away with all of these things. Instead of doing that, really force yourself to listen and just trust that you will know the right thing to say. And that becomes easier once you've pitched a lot more and you've practiced. But not all investors are the same, obviously, and they don't all have the same questions, and don't all have the same things that they're concerned about. So it can really help to just be like, I'm not going to be like in my head. I'm just going to really listen to what this person is wanting to figure out and understand, and what this person is passionate about, and try to respond to that. Versus my checklist in my head that I have to like talk about X, Y, and Z before I walk out of this room. That was really helpful feedback for me anyway.
Yeah, that's good. You know, we talked about this a little bit over email. You were raising money, COVID hits, almost at the same time you're diagnosed with breast cancer in January, and you're in I think you said a 400 square foot apartment in Brooklyn, trying to raise money. So I don't even know what the question is. Talk about like overcoming all these huge headwinds while trying to raise money and keep the business going. And I guess weave into that, you know, pivoting the business from coffee shops to direct to consumer. This is a big question with no clear question to it, but yeah, go for it. I could just talk about what happened and how we, through just sheer grit, just like got ourselves through it. So yeah, in January, I was diagnosed. I did not see it coming. I don't have breast cancer in my family. I'm too young by a lot of people's, you know, expectations. And it did send me into a spiral. I was like, I am in the middle of fundraising. You expect me to go tell investors I have cancer? And, you know, when you say cancer, everybody starts thinking of people they know and really sad stories and you know, horrible stuff. And so I was terrified. That was probably the thing that I was the most terrified. And I say that from a very privileged position because amongst the unlucky ones, I was extremely lucky. We caught it super early, stage 1. I have the kind of breast cancer that is the most curable and they can keep from coming back.
It's not that I still had to go through chemo and all of that stuff, but it's so privileged. So I was in a really privileged place where I had doctors telling me you're curable. And then my next worry was, of course, just my business. So I have to caveat with cancer shouldn't even be the same word for everybody because it's so different for everyone. But yeah, so I was diagnosed, told, you're going to have to go through 5 months of chemo. Didn't know what that meant. You're going to have minor surgeries, and then you're going to have, basically this is going to go on for a long time.
Yeah.
And
but this is at a time when you're really not supposed to go into hospitals because, especially in New York, I remember New York in March and April was bad, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
My first few rounds of chemo, I was nearly having a panic attack walking into the cancer center because there were still so many people just not really doing social distancing or not remembering because it was new and nobody was wearing masks yet. And it was really scary. But the good news is I had, a really great support system. And I think one of the really good things is my oncologist was very honest with me. And she was like, you're going to be able to do 95% of the things you did before. And these are the areas and time periods where it's going to be the hardest for you. So, knowing that I would be able to continue to work through all of it, but there would be like certain bits and starts where, things would be tougher and I would need help. I sent an email out to all of our investors and I was like, first of all, I'm really fortunate. This is curable. Second of all, we have a plan. And then I basically outlined the entire plan of how we were going to get through the next 6 months. And, I didn't know how people would react, but people were so supportive and positive. And, it was really stressful working through all of that, like going through chemo, dealing with kind of just trying to process everything that had been happening. Because once you end up in this sort of treatment mode, it's like so fast, your mind and your emotions like can't even keep up with what's going on. And then being stuck in an apartment, afraid to go outside was like another layer when you're trying to like be able to think big picture and you're stuck in a tiny apartment. But I think that I learned like a really amazing lesson through that, as a founder. Sometimes you look at self-care as like a luxury. You're like, I don't have time for that. I need to be working X number of hours a week to feel like I'm doing a good job. And I have to get my to-do list done no matter what happens. And I can't prioritize X, Y, and Z because, that might mean that I'm slowing down. I think a lot of founders are just really hard on themselves. And when I was going through cancer treatment, I was just looking for things that I could control. And they were like, if you work out a lot during chemo, that's actually really good. It makes the chemo work better, basically. It makes you process it better. So I was like, all right, I'm going to work out. I'm going to work out almost every single day. And my co-founders knew that there would be times in the day when I just would not book meetings because that was my workout time and that was part of my treatment plan. And I learned from that, I was like, why do I not allow myself to do things like that normally? Like if I need to meditate in the middle of the day, or if I need to take a walk, or just, sweat it out for a minute. Why was I so hard on myself? Because, we all need these breaks and they can really help us be more efficient in the long run. So it's a long way of saying that was a big way that we got through it too. Just allowing ourselves the things that we needed to feel a little bit better.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. This isn't a game of one-upmanship, but we had on a recent episode, Matt Paulson of Omaze, and he actually had died for like a minute and a half, and then they brought him back. So not to downplay anything like this, but just to put it all in perspective, right? Like, and that changed his perspective completely, So I think, and his message also was kind of founders, take care of yourself, I think that's a good message to emphasize and resonate with. So good. Well, glad to hear that's looking favorable. Let's see, jumping all over the place, but in the food business, is there how do you identify, you were doing kind of founders who know other founders, who might know investors. Is there any more central resource of people who have either invested in food businesses or, do you target people who have made money in food? Is there any kind of like tips for people in the food business to raise money, I guess is really the question.
Yeah, I definitely think that there are some founders who've wanted to then invest in other food businesses. We had one who's super supportive of us who wanted to do that. I think another thing that maybe is a benefit to raising for a food business is it's something that almost everybody can understand. So we did have friends of ours who had never been angel investors before, maybe had only done it a couple of times, or maybe once, if at all, who were really excited and passionate because it was something that they know the category, they see it every day. They go to coffee shops and grocery shop and cook, and they were like, we see the opportunity in this. So I think that's another benefit is maybe there are people in your life who are really passionate about the same things you are, and this is a really accessible category to them. So don't be afraid to go to people you know, or just talk about it, I mean, just like everybody talks about their jobs at a dinner party or nowadays on a Zoom call, don't be afraid to talk about it and be passionate about it, because you might be surprised who in your life comes to you and is like, I want to invest. I believe in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
I think the one other resource that was really great for us, and this was more from a networking perspective, but we were part of the WeWork Food Lab, and amazing people run it. They're all the people that work there at the New York one, and I know that the Austin one is great too. They're super connected in the food world and just super knowledgeable. So they connected us with investors as well, which was amazing. So yeah, there's a lot of great resources like that out there in every city.
Cool. The $175K you raised kind of during COVID, any tips for pitching investors? I'm assuming over Zoom. Did you kind of just do your regular thing?
Zoom calls. I mean, there are limitations that it's never going to be the same as real life. I think, well, so I will be honest and say the people who invested during that time, we had met them in person before, maybe only once, but we had the luck of being able to do that beforehand. But I think, with everything, it's just conveying your passion and also knowing the environment you're in. When we were pitching a year ago, that pitch changed a lot from what it is now, because now online grocery sales are way up. Shelf stable, healthy food sales are way up. So I guess there's also the question of, are there things that are happening during COVID that might mean that you need to change your pitch, whether it's, your business is being affected in negative ways or positive ways or both, and making sure it's super relevant.
Yeah. And on that note, if I'm understanding correctly, you kind of pivoted a little bit from selling to coffee shops into selling more direct to consumer. Was there any interesting story there? Or yeah.
We had been spending over a year building up relationships in the coffee shop world. We were going to do this big event at a coffee shop in our neighborhood. Unfortunately had to close. We had all kinds of live in-person events planned. We were doing in-person tastings at co-working spaces. And then all of a sudden the lockdown happened right around our launch. So we basically had to erase our memories of all these plans that we had been making and that we thought were so smart. And, we thought we had thought of every contingency except a pandemic.
Except a virus, yeah.
In the end, we kind of followed where the sales were, and that was Amazon. Food sales on Amazon have never been higher, and the healthy food sales and organic food sales in particular. So we basically had to go from being primarily focused on food service to, not abandoning all of those food service relationships, maintaining them, but also going on a completely new and different path and kind of juggling both at once.
Did pandemic interrupt your manufacturing at all? Did that impact you guys?
It did for a hot minute, but thankfully we chose a manufacturer that's really big and established. So we were really fortunate, and we just continued to convey to them that we might not be as big and established as some of their clients, but we're worth betting on because we will get there. And if they stick with us now, in a few years or 5 years, they're going to have this really solid relationship with a brand that's going to be on that same scale.
Yeah, one or two more questions kind of on that. So, obviously ambitions to grow big and fast. What are you thinking in terms of funding strategy? Like, are you thinking this is going to take 10 rounds and you'll have raised 500 million by the time you get acquired by XYZ, or how are you thinking about fundraising strategy basically? And
I
also
think
kind of
we're,
related to
yeah.
that, are there competitors that are getting funded in your space? Is there other funded oat milk folks? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Oatly just, had a huge event. Nut Pods has had huge events. I mean, a lot of our competitors are raising, amounts of money that make what we're doing just look like pennies. But we're just getting started. So, obviously this angel round isn't going to be enough to sustain us for the long haul. We're planning for a Series A in the next year and a half or two. We're kind of approaching it the same way a lot of food and beverage brands do, taking the same sort of steps and looking at, similar timelines. But I think with all of this, we're just kind of doing the same thing we've always done, which is meeting with everybody we can, which is now including a lot of professional investors, because we know those relationships will take time, and just kind of planting those seeds now so that, if the plan goes as planned, or as everything goes as planned, we are ready to raise when we want to do that Series A. And if things don't go as planned, at least we've got, a lot of irons in the fire and a lot of things that we can do, and people that we can talk to.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, good. Well, any last bits of advice, other tips we haven't covered, or advice you would give your younger self if you were doing this all over again?
Oh my goodness. I think the biggest piece of advice is that I've found to be just like a helpful reminder is to remember that, when you have a really tough day, or, something blows up, or inevitably something blows up that you didn't see coming, to remember that that's already happened a bunch of times to you before and you somehow got through it. And I feel like, as founders, it's like each time you get over some hump that in the moment you were just like, how in the world? You have to kind of remember those when you get past them, because when something else happens, it's like, that's what you can go back to and be like, well, we got through that. So we'll figure out a way around this next one. And if we don't know what to do, hopefully we know somebody who can maybe talk us off the ledge and help us figure out the right way forward,
What's one last bonus question? What's the hardest part of running a food startup?
I think manufacturing is one of the hardest parts. For instance, if you are projecting your sales are going to go up significantly, you have to buy the ingredients and book the manufacturing and pay for all of that well in advance of producing it. In our category, there's a super high barrier to entry. So like with beer or kombucha, it's a little bit easier for anyone, who knows how to make it, obviously, to get involved. When it comes to this shelf-stable packaging, when it comes to plant-based milks, there just isn't enough manufacturing capacity for all of the businesses out there. And so there is the power kind of lies in the hands of the people who manufacture it to decide whether or not they want to take your money. And that is really challenging. We spent an entire summer talking to manufacturers because we wanted to find one that would be a really good partner, would respect us, would actually care about our product. And thankfully, because my sister has so much experience and they weren't like, she's going to be annoying, she doesn't know what she's doing. We were able to get in with someone that we really trust. But that's a huge stressor, I think, for a lot of people trying to get into the shelf-stable Tetra Pak world right now.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. That makes sense. I guess if you're doing a lot of direct-to-consumer sales, it seems like it used to be very, very difficult, or one of the biggest challenges for food products was like getting slotting and getting into retail stores. But maybe that's not so important to you guys, or is this down the line? What do you think?
We're already in some retail stores in New York. Right now, we're very much focused on building this Amazon business. if you had talked to me a year ago, I probably would have said, we're going region by region and we're starting on food service. Now we're already nationwide. So we're already on Amazon Prime. So, with a lot of food businesses, there are a lot of different paths. I know a lot of brands that are doing really well, just going region by region, adding and adding and adding. And then eventually, they're in retailers nationwide and they've got brokers everywhere. Other brands start, on direct to consumer and do really well that way. And I think it depends on the product. It depends on the category. It depends on how your target wants to buy you. So there's a lot of different factors, but we're not ruling out retail by any means.
Do you have to do something special to become Amazon Prime versus just sold on Amazon?
There are a lot of hoops to jump through with getting your product on Amazon. I come from a marketing background. Elena comes from manufacturing background. We both felt like we knew enough to be dangerous to get ourselves on Amazon. And then as we dug further, we realized that was not the case. You need a consultant. I know some founders have, been able to do it themselves, but I get the feeling that then becomes like, that's their job, is like focusing on Amazon all the time. So we went the consultant route.
We don't have to go into too much detail, but what do they do to kind of get you on? What's the short version summary of getting on Amazon Prime for anyone who's...
Well, I'll put it this way. I mean, have you ever bought an Amazon product that was on like the 55th page at the bottom of the page? And
right.
No, you buy like the ones on the first page that shows up when you search. So the simple answer is they get you there.
Gotcha. But to be on Prime means you can be delivered like in a day or so. So does that special deal to get into their distribution warehouses?
It has to do with all kinds of different aspects of logistics and how you're able to set yourself up both on your end and within their system. So there's all different pathways you can take to do that. But and in my experience, there's also a lot of things you can do wrong. And if you do something wrong, it can be really tough with Amazon because they ding you for it. And, I know brands that haven't been able to bounce back from those kinds of issues. So when you work with a consultant, it's like you don't have to stress quite so much about making some catastrophic error that then, prevents you from getting to be Prime or prevents you from getting that spot, that you were hoping for.
Last question, I'll let you go. Where do you find a consultant? I'm just thinking if I'm in the shoes of a food business, where do you find this consultant?
So, the way I did it is I started by just talking to lots of other food entrepreneurs and reaching out to people. And then they gave me their thoughts on what they did or if they did it themselves. A lot of food entrepreneurs do it as like a side hustle as well, which could be a more affordable way to do it. But there are a bunch of great agencies out there that do this kind of thing. And they usually are founded by people who have worked for Amazon, know the ins and outs of the company, and then started their own agency. Interesting.
Okay, cool. All right. You don't have to give away all your secrets, but this is always interesting because it's definitely a new, Amazon controls the world and is increasingly doing so. So, good stuff to know. All right, Christina, thank you so much. This is great. Do people order through, where do you want to send people? To Amazon Prime or to willaskitchen.com?
Either one, whatever you prefer. And if you have a good experience, we'd also love a great review.
Great. Awesome. Any new, how many flavors do you have? Is it like...
We have one product out there now, and we have two products coming out in October. They're both going to be available for pre-sale soon, and one is going to be the oat milk with the least sugar in the category. So if you're somebody who's interested in that, check out willaskitchen.com. We'll be sending out emails soon, and you'll be able to get it there as well as on Amazon.
All right, I need to try this because I've never had it, like I mentioned. So I'm very curious. So I'll keep an eye out for it. All right, thank you so much. Good luck,
Thank you so much.
We'll catch you after your next round.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.